the announcement and confirmation that an update to the One Piece card game banned and restricted list is coming in August, it's time for us to put our collective tinfoil hats on and try and figure out what cards are going to be on that list. So in today's video, I've got 10 cards for you that could potentially either be banned or restricted with the upcoming update, as well as a potential card that might just make its way off. My name's Ben Fitzpatrick, I'm a TCG caster, which means I just love talking about them, so let's do that right now. Before we get into today's video, I'm going to ask you, if you do enjoy this, please go ahead and drop a like rating on it. Subscribe to the channel as well if you hadn't already. At the time of recording, we're just 3 subscribers away from 100 subs, which is an incredible number that I didn't think that we'd be able to achieve by the end of this year, let alone potentially now looking like by the end of this month. So please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Turn on those notifications and comment down below with the cards that you think are going to be added to the banned and restricted list. And while you're down there, go ahead, drop me a follow over on X. So, with the announcement that we are going to get a banned update at some time in August, bearing in mind the actual date for the banned and restricted list update hasn't been confirmed yet. All we know from the Miyagi Championship Series stream a couple of days ago is that it is coming and it's going to happen in August. So we're going to quickly go through and update what's on the banned and restricted list at the moment as of March 27th, 2025, the post-World Championships ban update. So with that ban update, we got Gecko Moria, Jinbei, Ice Age, and Kingdom Come, 4 cards added to the ban list. And these are all banned cards, not restricted. So they are not usable in competitive play at all in the One Piece card game currently. They join cards like Trafalgar Law, the starter deck 10 leader, Eni's Lobby from OPO 3, Sakazuki from OPO 5, Great Eruption and Reject, as well as Moby Dick and Kabaji, still being on the list all the way back from their inception in December of 2023. So these are the cards that are all on the ban list, and it's important to note as well that all of these are flat out banned. None of these cards are restricted at this point in time. So we're going to go through 10 cards in this video that potentially could either be outright banned or potentially restricted here as well. And it's worth me pointing out at this point that this is no confirmation, this is no official word or anything like that, despite me having sort of caster ties to Bandai or anything. I don't have any kind of insider information. This is purely speculative, and this is in no particular order as well. I'm not saying that one card needs to be banned more than another, or one card needs to be restricted more than another needs to be banned. That's not what this video is about. This is just 10 potential options that we could see going in August. And we're going to start off with the one that's on everybody's lips, Gum Gum Giant. I think there is quite a universal opinion in the player base, in the community at the moment, that this card needs to go and that this card is unhealthy for the format. The 1-cost counter event in purple, Dom -2, trash 1 from hand. If your leader is Straw Hat Crew type, plus 4,000 power during the battle, then draw 2 cards. You're essentially losing no cards in hand because of the draw 2, replacing the giant itself and the 1 extra card that you trash away from hand. You're drawing 2 cards that could potentially help you in the counter step, which is what we see a lot of happening in Gum Gum Giant usages. And it is just so good and so strong in the Luffy meta that we are seeing at the moment. There's so many dominant Luffy leaders, and all of them are purple. So getting rid of Gum Gum Giant is one that a lot of people are believing is going to be at the top of Bandai's list. The one slight issue and hindrance that people are thinking about with Gum Gum Giant is that it's just been announced to have a special artwork reprint for Premium Booster 2. It's going to get the manga-style event treatment that we've seen a couple of events getting over the past couple of sets. Things like Divine Departure, Gear 2, that kind of artwork style. I'll pop a picture up on the screen for you, just in case that you can have a visual of what this card is going to look like. All jokes aside and everything aside, the card looks absolutely beautiful. I love these manga event style cards, but it's causing a lot of the community to go, well, actually, they're printing this card. They're not only reprinting this card in the set, but it's getting this really, really top-of-the-range special artwork treatment, and it's unlikely that Bandai are going to go ahead and ban because of that. I can understand the thought process behind that, but Gecko Moria also got a reprint in PRB 01. Now, again, granted, this was a little bit of a way down the line after PRB 01 released, but it did get a reprint, and it did get an alternate art treatment, and then was subsequently banned a few months later. So I think Gum Gum Giant is still firmly on the table to leave the format at the moment. I don't think it's going to get limited. I think if they're doing anything with this card, they're outright banning it, because even one copy of Gum Gum Giant, we saw a few formats ago, quite a while ago, with Radical Beam. That card is still very, very strong, or was very, very strong in that format at the time, and even having one of them to save yourself from one important attack can change a game. So I think if they're doing anything with Gum Gum Giant, they're either leaving it alone completely, which, in my personal opinion, I think could possibly be the wrong move, or they're just outright banning it, which I think I'm leaning towards more so if they are touching this card at all. So that's Gum Gum Giant worried about. That's one of the cards. But what about a Straw Hat Crew type leader? That's where we get to card number 2 that I think could be banned. Blue Purple Luffy leader, potentially as a second option, as another option to leave the format in its entirety. This leader, when it works and when it gets going, is very, very strong, and dare I say is nigh on unstoppable if they are allowed to get that very, very strong and quick ramp going in the early game. That 6,000 power base, yes, it's only 3 life, but 6,000 power base forces your opponent to put a lot of work into to be able to even just try and make that cursory swing for 6k, and by that point, your opponent likely has the opportunity to counter in hand anyway. So then when you get to that 8 Don or more stage, and you get that free leader ability, you're drawing 2 cards at the start of your turn. You're drawing one from the leader ability search, you're drawing one anyway during the start of turn procedures, and you're setting yourself up amazingly for things like the 9-cost Sanji turn, where you can Sanji into Pudding, or Big Mom, or Sanji into Katakuri. It is just such a strong leader at the moment. Hasn't quite gotten the results yet, maybe to necessarily make a ban happen, but I think that if you... It's difficult. I think this leader could potentially be banned. I think if the leader doesn't get banned, then stuff in it definitely has to, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, because I think without it, this leader just continues to run away with the format. And again, this is kind of going back to whether we ban Gum Gum Giant or not. Gum Gum Giant and this deck is crazy. You boost yourself up plus 4,000, you're at 10k now at a base swing. It's just very, very strong. It's just a very, very strong leader. It's a very, very strong deck in the format at the moment. One of the most, if not the most, represented at the moment consistently. There may also be a potential that Bandai are going to wait for the results of the European Championship Finals in France in a couple of weeks to see and to make their final decision on what the ban is going to be and when that date is going to be announced. But I would not be surprised if Blue Purple Luffy leader in its entirety is one that goes away. Bandai has a precedence for banning leaders. We've seen it with Edward Newgate, Red Purple Law. What other leaders have we seen banned in the past? Sakazuki as well. Bandai have a precedence for just outright going, nope, the leader's just going away. So I would not be shocked to see Blue Purple Luffy in its entirety just get put on the shelf. I promised about cards potentially that could be going that are also within this deck, and the next 2 cards I'm going to kind of combine together as cards 3 and 4, because they're both in this deck. They're both very, very versatile, and the way that they have sort of shaped the format with purple in particular, and they are of the same attribute. I'm talking about 8-cost Katakuri and 9-cost Charlotte Linlin. We'll talk about Katakuri first, because this Katakuri is just absolutely ridiculous. 8-cost 8k blocker. At the end of your turn, set up to 2 of your Big Mom Pirates type characters with the cost of 3 or more as active. Then add up to 1 Don card from your Don deck and rest it. So in purple at the moment, obviously, being able to stand itself as active, this card not saying set up to 2 of your Big Mom Pirate type characters other than Katakuri as active, is just ridiculous. It's a free 8k minimum attacker, which is just absolutely egregious. We don't need that in the format right now. Then, with it having blocker, again, egregious. It's a free 8k attacker that you're not getting punished for overextending with, because it restands at the end of the turn anyway, so you can then use it as a blocker. And it's an 8k blocker, so what we've seen time and time again in, again, I'll go back to Blue Purple Luffy in particular, you'll see a swing come in for like 8k or something like that, try and hit those 2000 power or more magic numbers that you're typically looking for in the One Piece card game. And someone with a Katakuri on the board is just going to go, okay, cool, I block with Katakuri and 1k to save it. And then what do you do? Just sit there, realistically, because you've put all this effort into trying to swing 8k into life and force the Katakuri interaction, but your opponent's now got a billion cards in hand because they've reached 8 or more Don, and they're drawing 2 cards per turn because of the leader ability and the draw step. So I think this card definitely needs to go. Then I've not even touched on the fact that you can add 1 Don card from your Don deck and rest it, so it incentivizes Blue Purple Luffy players, just purple players in general, to be a little bit more liberal with how they use Gum Gum Giant. You don't have to worry too much about how aggressively you're Don minusing, because it's offset by your Charlotte Katakuri blocker now. So I think this card, if anything is being done with it, I think it needs to go. I don't think limiting it really helps at all, because even having 1 of these on the board is really quite oppressive. It's at that 8 cost range, so it's not like you can go ahead and Grav Blade it. The removal that you're looking for is either sort of in black, heavy cost reduction and KO, which, because of Ice Age still being on the banned and restricted list, is a little bit harder, and a lot more resources have to be put into getting Katakuri off the board by cost reduction and KO, or you're running blue and you're using Gum Gum Red Rock on it. Those are your 2 big options to be able to truly remove it without there being too much kind of argument. So I think Katakuri is definitely a potential front runner to going. Charlotte Lin Lin is one that may be a little bit more off the wall. Lin Lin, though, has become somewhat of a staple in purple decks because of its effect. On play, Don -1, trash 1 card from hand, add up to 1 card from the top of your deck to the top of your life, then you can add a 6 or less character on your opponent's side of the board to the top or bottom of their life face up. So it's healing, it's a little bit of hand filtration with the trash in hand, it's a 9k body, and it is quasi removal because you're putting a potential card into your opponent's life. Yes, they do have the opportunity to get it again by the time they take the damage, sure, but by that point, you're trying to play 1 step ahead, right? You're trying to set your opponent up to have an empty card as that final one in life. You know what the card's going to be because it's face up, so you want it to be either a brick card, a no counter card, or something like a 1k when you know that you can swing in excess of that ability. The fact that you can heal as well, and it being in purple, kind of breaks the barriers and breaks the design rules, almost, that Bandai have imposed themselves within the One Piece card game. When you think of healing yourself, you think of yellow, right? You think Charlotte Lin Lin is also going to be in yellow, because you're originally looking at the Big Mom Pirates, and Charlotte Katakuri and Charlotte Lin Lin, when they originally were introduced into the One Piece card game as leaders and characters, were in yellow, and they had healing effects. Here, Charlotte Lin Lin breaks that mold in purple by allowing you to heal. And it works so well in combination with Blue Purple Luffy, because you're on that 3 life range, you can take a damage or so throughout the course of the game and still feel like you're in a healthy position. There was a game during the French regionals a couple of weeks ago. I can't quite remember off the top of my head where it was. It was Toulouse regionals. There was a game in Toulouse regionals in the top cut with Blue Purple Luffy in the feature match area. And Blue Purple Luffy was on game 1 and saw every single copy of Charlotte Lin Lin. And his opponent just couldn't do anything about it because he healed 4 times one of them was off of a blind 9-cost Sanji flip. So that just goes to show how impactful that this card can be, prolonging the game state by keeping you at 2, even just at 1 life. Even just at 1 life can be enough if you're constantly just whittling away your opponent's board with constant 9k bodies. So again, I think this is a card that could potentially be going. This could also serve as a slight preemptive ban as well, because we've just had Gold D Roger fully revealed from OP13. And the fact that card has 5 life, by the way, just absolutely ridiculous. But the fact that it has 5 life, and the fact that you can Don -1 potentially take the Don off of the leader with its effect, is very, very strong, and could potentially be very, very strong and unlock that 7,000 power of the base print of Goldie Roger. So 2 different kind of avenues as to why Charlotte Lindley could be banned: active ban and a proactive ban, to help kind of alleviate what Roger looks like he could do to the format. But definitely I think he's going to be a candidate to go away. And again, is there an argument for this card to be limited? Maybe. I don't know whether it would still be as impactful if it was limited to, say, 1 or 2. But to be completely safe, I think banning the card could just alleviate a lot of potential headaches that Bandai could face in the future. Now we get into some more of the kind of potential bans, a little bit more speculative bans and restrictions. And one of them is going to cause a lot of people for some surprise. Charlotte Pudding. Charlotte Pudding is a very, very weird card. 4 cost 4k, 1k counter, on play, your opponent returns all cards in their hand to their deck and shuffles their deck, then your opponent draws 5 cards. How many times in the history of this card being released have you been puddinged and has it felt awful? Most times? Okay, so we're on a very similar page here. I'm not 100% convinced about whether Charlotte Pudding needs to be outright banned, or whether it needs to be limited at all, or whether this is just complete hocus. But it is a very, very oppressive effect. And it's an effect that we've not really seen much of or anything of in a similar vein throughout the One Piece card game. Yes, we've had cards that have trashed things out of hand, like Negative Hollow. We've had 4-cost Perona as well. There are cards that force your opponent to trash out from hand. Absolutely. But this is different. This forces you to shuffle your entire hand back and draw 5 cards. And if you've sculpted your hand to such a way, if you've worked your way into a board state and a hand state that, you know, you're happy with and you feel like you can continue to play the rest of the game with, if you get puddinged, your game could potentially just be over. There's so many instances where I've been playing a game either with something like Black Yellow Luffy or with Nami. Don't get me started about being puddinged if I'm playing Nami. That as soon as this character comes down to the board, your game kind of ends. Because you shuffle your hand into your deck after you've spent so long crafting it. You draw 5 cards that are suboptimal for the way that the board state is presenting itself now. And your opponent just runs away with it. So, pudding could maybe a little bit more of a left field ban, if it is, maybe in a similar vein to Kingdom Come was in the last ban wave. But I think there is a potential argument for it. If not outright banning it, limiting it. I think limiting pudding could be absolutely fine if you wanted to play really, really safe. But it is a potential option that Bandai could have to maybe look at hitting. The next card that we're going to talk about is another one that's a little bit more out there. These last 2 cards have been a little bit more kind of community driven. I've had a look around and seen some of the musings from some players in the game at the moment, both in EU and in North America. But Hody Jones is another card that is one of those that has become kind of a necessity and a staple in the colour pairing or the colour aspect that you're playing in. There are very few green decks that are running around that would not play Hody Jones. Lim is one of them, because all characters come in rested, and what are you going to do with a rush character that's going to come in rested and force you to take a damage? But what else is there? Lim, I've already said Lim. Uta. Uta plays Hody Jones, I'm pretty sure. It's been a while since I've seen a green Uta deck, but I don't see why not for Uta to play Hody Jones. You know, Bonnie plays Hody. A lot of other green decks are going to play Hody. Yamato plays Hody at the moment in green-yellow. It is just a great classic finisher for a deck. But because of that ability to rest Don cards, as well as your opponent's characters, you have to play in a very specific way to make sure that you're not just immediately getting punished by Hody Jones. If you go double blocker, but with no Don active, both blockers just get rested, and you get swung and killed. If you go blocker and a Don, ready for a counter event, they both get rested, and you potentially just lose. So you have to go, like, one blocker, 2 Don open, to potentially leave that one available for you to counter event with. Yes, it's slightly offset by the fact that you have to take a damage in order to utilize the effect, but it's a potential. I'm not 100% convinced, if I'm being perfectly honest, that Hody Jones outright needs to be banned. A restriction, maybe, but I'm not sure there's too many Hody Jones or green decks that are out there that are full out playing 4 Hodys. A couple of Bonnie builds maybe are going up to 4, but I think that the safety net area is kind of around 3 Hodys at the moment in the format. But it is an option, and it is a potential, and I've seen a lot of players at the moment in the community saying, you know what, maybe it's the time that we put the Fishman to rest. So is that going to happen in August? I'm leaning towards probably not, but I think it is still worth talking about because it is a strong card, and it is a card that has embedded itself in a lot of strategies in green at the moment. And that's what we tend to look for when we're looking at cards that could either be banned or restricted. Cards that have warped a format in its entirety or warped a particular playstyle to where you're either having to play it or having to include it, or whether the community and players are having to play around it and account for it in an excessive level. So those are the kind of criteria that we look for here when we're looking at potentially banning cards. So Hody does kind of fit in a couple of those categories. So is it going to be enough for Bandai to want to take a potential look at and a conceited look at it? Potentially. We'll have to wait until August. Continuing with the potential out there calls, and this one is a little bit different because this is just an outright pre-active potential ban that we could be seeing ahead of OP12. And I'm talking about Dracul Mihawk. 8 cost 8k blocker. If you haven't seen this card before, we will be getting it in the next set. It's an 8 cost 8k blocker that on play restands 4 Don. Yes, you heard that right. Set up to 4 of your Don cards as active. So this is essentially a 4 cost 8k blocker. Then you cannot play character cards with a base cost of 7 or more during this turn. But who cares about that second effect? You've got 4 extra Don to work with, to either swing with, or play something down like a Rouge blocker, or a Cavendish, or something else. This card is very, very good. And the big reason that I'm talking about this being a potential proactive ban, or preemptive ban, by the time that OP12 comes out, or OP12 comes out, is because, and I've got to find him here, where is the boy? It's because of this man, Roronoa Zoro. The Roronoa Zoro leader at the moment is kind of taking over the Japanese format at the moment. It's consistently one of the, if not the most represented deck across championship series and tournaments at the moment. And a big reason for that is because of this Dracul Mihawk, because you can play Mihawk, restand 4 of your Don, and immediately put 3 of them underneath the leader, ready to activate its effect, which is Don times 3, activate main once per turn. If this leader battles your opponent's character during this turn, the leader is set as active, and then cannot attack your opponent's character as the base cost of 7 or less during this turn. So the idea here is, and I'm going to put the alt art up because this alt art is gorgeous. I love the wave of alt arts that we're getting in OP12 with the Master and Apprentice vibe that we've got going on. But the idea here is you swing into a character, restand, and then swing at life. So you've got two different avenues that you're attacking with here. You're controlling board, and you're going for game pressure in a true mid-range style strategy here. And this Dracula Mihawk super rare, which has gone wandering, here he is in alt art form, is a big hand and facilitator in that. And of course, adding on to the fact that he is an 8-cost 8k blocker that you are playing out for effectively 4 Don because of the on-play effect. And it's not like it's type locked either, so you could play this in, like, Bonnie, for example, play this in Bonnie, have the 4 Don set as active, then play a Rouge for another blocker, end of your turn, set it on as active, ready for the leader ability, and you've got 2 great big walls to help you go up into that 10 Don turn and take massive control. Play something like Lauren Beppo, like Don Quixote do Flamingo, 8-cost Kid potentially. This might even end up replacing 8-cost Kid just because of how big it is and how much value you gain from it. I think this is something that we haven't, or I certainly haven't seen the community talk about too much at the moment. And that might be because that we just haven't had these cards so far in the West yet. But in the East at the moment, in Japan, this card and this deck entirely is causing a lot of problems. We could just see Zoro preemptively banned, which I think is unlikely. We've not seen a leader get preemptively banned yet. I don't think actually we've even seen a card apart from Kabaji get preemptively banned, at least not for a long time. Kabaji, I believe, was the only one that was preemptively banned because Bandai looked at that and went, yeah, no, we've accidentally created an infinite with Nami, so we're not going to allow that to even get into players' hands. So Mihawk is probably the more likely of the two to get banned or restricted, actioned in some way by Bandai, because there is a precedent set for it. But do they just pull a complete and utter curveball and ban the Zoro leader? Like I said, I don't think that's happening. I think if they're going after anything in that deck as a preemptive strike, they're going after Mihawk, and they're going after it in a big way. The last 2 cards that we're going to talk about are less ban potentials and more restriction potentials, I think, because I think banning these cards outright isn't necessarily the correct move. One of them, in fact, actually, I tell a lie, Sanjin Pudding. Sanjin Pudding, I think, is also a card that could be limited. Banning it outright, I'm not 100% sure. This would maybe be a little bit more preemptive as well to try and stop a rise in green-purple Luffy coming back up. If Bandai goes ahead and bans blue-purple, for example, outright, green-purple is then just kind of left to run riot almost here. And its ability, if you get 2 of them on the board, is just insane. You get leader effect for free, which is just silly. So this could be a card that could be outright banned. Limited, maybe a little bit more so. Limit it to 2 or something like that maybe. But with the amount of search that you've got in that deck as well, and the amount of ways to try and potentially find it, you've got Law, you've got Nami, you've got the draw off of the Merry-Go. Maybe outright banning it could be the better move. But we're going to quickly brush past this one and talk about the 2 cards that I think are more likely to just be restricted. One of those is Emporio Ivankov. Now, I said in my short I released a few days ago, which I don't know if I can bring the link to shorts. We'll find out. This will be experimentative. If there is an icon in the corner of your screen pointing to a YouTube short, you'll know it's worked. If not, go and have a look at the YouTube short that I posted. We're going to start doing those a little bit more often. But for Costa Vankov, I mentioned about Betty potentially being hit during that short because of how strong that it is as a meta call right now. And this Emporio Vankov is a big reason, I think, why this deck is so strong. You also do have the 5 Costa Vankov, and there might be people typing in the comments right now and saying, Ben, if you're banning an Ivankov, why not ban the 5 cost? There's a good reason why I'm not thinking about banning or actioning the 5 cost. The 5 cost is only an on-play effect. Yes, it searches top 3 and plays a character in, but it only happens once. 4 cost of Ankov can happen multiple times. It's an activate main ability that is a 7 or higher 1000 power attacker with the leader effect. So you use leader effect or put 2 Don underneath it to save leader effect for elsewhere, activate its ability, play something like the 4 cost Karasu down to help the numbers equate in your favour a little bit more, and then just swing out and do what Betty does best. Don't get me wrong, and I want to make this abundantly clear, I'm not advocating 4 cost of Ankov to be outright banned. I think if you outright ban this card, you maybe not necessarily kill the deck, but you stunt it very, very heavily. I am advocating potentially, or at least putting the case forward, for limiting this card to potentially 2 or 3. Because I think even with a limit, Betty still survives if you see a very strong opening couple of turns. If you see a Betty Searcher or your Revolutionary Army HQ on 1, you see something like Karasu on 2, or on, depending on sort of what turns that you're going on. There's a couple of different ways around it. We've seen Betty decks succeed without seeing much of the 4 cost 5k of Ankov, so I don't think it would be the end of the world if this card would be limited. I do think it would be the end of the world if it got banned, though. Do we also then, it goes to the argument of, do we then just outright see Bello Betty get banned? I don't think so, because I think that there is a certain ceiling and a certain panache to the Bello Betty deck. If you can outlast Betty and get it to that old Achilles heel that I mentioned many times on commentary during One Piece card game official events, that if you get over those initial few 5-turn waves or so, that Betty just runs out of steam and you can onslaught from there. You can get rid of the board entirely, as long as you stay around 2 to 3 life-ish, depending on what kind of like 4 or 5 life leader that you're playing. If you can survive those turns and make it so that your opponent has 0 cards in hand and is on top deck mode throughout the rest of the game, you win from there. So I don't think that banning Betty outright is necessary. I don't necessarily think banning cards in Betty is necessary either. Limiting, however, that is a potential line that I could see being explored. The last card that we're going to talk about is a very off-the-wall call, and is maybe one that might be a little bit too late to action, but I think it has a chance, and I think there is an actionable potential. And that's Jesus Burgess. 4 cost 5k, this character cannot be KO'd by your opponent's effect, and if it has the Blackbeard, if your leader has Blackbeard Pirate's type, it gets plus 1k power for every 4 cards in your trash. We all know what this card does, and we all know how much of a problem this card can be. I have made it perfectly clear in my playing circles and things like that, that I don't think this card should have been printed at this rarity. I think that having this effect on a rare that boosts up because of your leader ability is just innately a wrong thing to have done. I think this card was a design misstep for a problematic reason. Obviously, the biggest draw with Jesus Burgess is that it is one of your, if not your entire, main attacker in the Marshall D Teach deck. So, the questions arise, if you ban or limit Jesus Burgess, does that destroy Teach as a deck in its entirety? Do we even need to touch Teach? Because it's not been impacting the format at this current time. My argument is, I think you have other potential attackers that you can utilize in Burgess. Obviously, there is a potential stage that you get to where you just start swinging with your 10 cost Teaches. You've also got your 5 cost Kuzans from OP10. You've also got some of the cards from the starter deck that were released, the reprint starter deck from this for this leader. You've also got Katarina Devon, that's not a bad attacker at all, either getting double attack, banish, or blocker once per turn until the end of your opponent's next turn. So some not bad pressure there. And it's a little bit more interactive to go into. That's one of my biggest issues with Jesus Burgess, is that it can be so hard to interact with this character. the way that you are relying really on clearing the way of a Burgess is either by pipping it early before it can get to a place where it's at 7, 8, or 9k kind of range, or you're playing blue and you've got bounce or bottom deck capabilities. Those are the two real ways that you are interacting with Jesus Burgess, which I think, again, when we're looking at those kind of pillars and those kinds of potential reasons that Bandai could look to action a card, it fulfills those issues, right? Or at least fulfills one of those issues. It's a card that completely warps and changes the design, completely warps and changes the way that you have to play. Because this plus 1k thing, that's not something you can interact with easily. The Jesus Burgess, the Majesty Teach player, is going to be trashing cards away anyway for its leader effect to stop you from getting on plays. With My Era Begins to search as well, and to activate the full lead, to activate the stage. So there's not really many ways that you're going to be able to interact and prevent this plus 1k stack thing from happening. Does it need to be outright banned? Again, I'm not 100% sure. I think that this card can survive and can work if it is just limited, because you've got the 5-cost Kuzan that can return it back into play if either it is, if it is attacked into and KO'd that way, because it can't be KO'd by your opponent's effects, or if your opponent has to or wants to trash it away for an effect or anything like that. So I'm not 100% sure whether Burgess needs to be banned, but it is a possibility that we could maybe see it actioned. Like I said throughout this video, this is kind of theory crafting, this is suggestions, this is in no way kind of absolute, yes, this card has to be banned, or yes, this card needs to go on the restricted list. It's just a possibility that we could see, depending on how players sort of react to the possibilities of the things that really are at the top of players' minds of getting banned. You want to account for any of those potential inevitabilities or things that could rise up. A preemptive ban like what we've seen in Star Wars Unlimited, they, in their most recent ban wave, banned a card to preempt a leader potentially just getting super strong again, with certain other cards and leaders being removed from the game. So this is kind of falling into that category and possibly stopping Marshall D. Teach from having his era begin or even begin again. So those are the 10 cards that I think could possibly go either onto the banned or restricted list. Let's talk about cards that maybe could come off of the restricted list. I've seen a couple of arguments saying that maybe there are some things that need to be removed. Red Purple Law, I've seen a little bit of conversation for that. I've seen the Hopers asking for Sakazuki maybe to come back. In all honesty, I don't think there's anything that's moving from this list. Apart from one card. There's one card that I think that could potentially move from this list. I don't know whether it's going to move in a completely unrestricted fashion. It might move to be a limited capability card as one of or two of, but it is a card that when I saw it get banned, I was very surprised. And that card is Kingdom Come. I think when this card got banned, it stopped yellow for the most part, or at least at that point when the ban list was announced. Yes, ever since then we've had, Mono Yellow Kid, we've had Green Yellow Law, Yamato's come back into the fold, but we've not had those traditional mono yellow strategies that have done well or have been sustained in the format. I'm talking mostly about your Enels and your Katakuris. Yes, Vegapunk popped up for a little bit during EVO2 and has consequently disappeared into obscurity and hopism kind of vibes again, which is a shame because I love Vegapunk. I'm thinking about maybe bringing it out for locals this week, so watch out for the One Piece card game Voyage Diaries, the next episode coming out soon to see whether I do stick with the hopium of the Egghead leader. But I was very surprised when Kingdom Come did get banned. The reason that Bandai gave, you can see here, is that when it was used in combination with And now, the synergy between the card's removal effect and the leader's defensive ability proved to be more powerful than anticipated. There is also the concern that having to develop cards with this combo in mind will greatly limit the future development of high-cost character cards. The problem that you've got at the moment, though, is that the format is dominated by high-cost character cards. Blue-Purple Luffy with Sanji, Katakuri, Charlotte Pudding. Green-Purple Luffy even with 6-cost Luffy, the secret rare from EBO2. Sanji and Pudding, okay, it's 5-cost, it's not quite in that kind of range, but still, you know, it's there. You've got 8-cost Kids running around, you've got Hurry Joneses running around, you've got 7-cost Laws running around. The format at the moment in terms of characters is quite tall. So a way to be able to just outright deal with some of them would, I think, be greatly, greatly appreciated. Like I said before, I don't know whether this card gets just freely returned from the banned and restricted list, just straight off, here you go, you get it back as a 4 of. I think it's fine coming back in as a 1 or 2 of in limited capability. I think that 2, maybe 3 at a push is kind of all you need, maybe, for Kingdom Come to come back. So I would argue that this card actually just didn't even need to be banned in the first place. Like I said, I was very, very shocked when this was announced. The other 3 cards I totally understood. Moria, it was a slight surprise, more of in a sense of, oh, they actually went and banned Gecko Moria, because I thought this card for a long time had reached untouchable status. It was a mono-black staple, so many decks were playing it, and then it got outright banned. Jinbei absolutely needs to get banned. Doflamingo was too much of an issue and too widespread. Either that or 4-cost Trafalgar Law or both. Ice Age was initially a little bit of a surprise. Then after a little bit of thinking, a little bit of musing, I realised, actually, you know what? Yeah, Ice Age isn't a bad idea to ban. This could be a card as well that we could see return in a limited capability. I'm a little bit less convinced that that might be the case. Kingdom Come or Raigo, though, was a left field shock. Absolutely. And I think in that manner, I think this is the most likely card that could potentially make its way off of the banned and restricted list. I've seen the arguments to bring Red Purple Law back. However, I think because there is another instance of Raise Max, Gordon, whatever you want to call it, that's been printed since, and the fact that there has been that rework and replacement leader for it, as was the case with Sakazuki, I don't think this leader's ever coming back. And I think it's the same case with Sakazuki. I think that Bandai have set a precedent for that, saying that if we ban a leader and rework it, the original version just is not coming back at all. We have seen leaders make their way off of the ban list, like Edward Newgate, for example, but importantly, Newgate never received a reworked leader. It was just banned because it was a 6k 6 life leader that had so much support around it in so many ways that you could turn off the effect of having to take 1 damage at the end of each of your turns. So I don't think those 2 are coming back. I don't think anything else has the possibility to potentially come back in any real considered capacity apart from Raigo. That would be my pick if anything was moving off of the list. However, they might not touch anything, and it could just be cards that are going on, and we will not know until it happens, until that date is announced next month. So that means it's over to you. Let me know down in the comment section what you think. Are there any cards that you agree with, any cards that you disagree with, any cards that you think that I may have missed out on this list? By all means, suggest away, give me your arguments for them, but be nice to each other, be nice to yourselves as well. We don't need that kind of flame and that kind of vitriol in the community and in the comment section at all. If you did enjoy this video though, please be sure to drop a like rating on it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on those notifications so you do not miss an upload. But until next time, thank you so much for watching. Until the next video, see you soon. Goodbye for now.